What's going on, everyone? Let me tell you about something that just went down on SportsCenter today that has the entire NFL world talking about the San Francisco 49ers in ways that honestly nobody expected just a few weeks ago. I'm talking about the kind of storyline that makes you completely reassess your preseason predictions, that forces you to reconsider who the legitimate contenders are in the NFC, that has analysts and fans alike wondering if we've been sleeping on what this team can accomplish despite all the adversity they've faced. So buckle up, because what I'm about to share from today's ESPN broadcast, after the Niners beat the Panthers on Monday Night Football, isn't just about one game, it's about a franchise that's defying expectations and positioning itself for something special down the stretch. All right, here's the situation that had the entire SportsCenter panel absolutely buzzing this morning. And I'm talking about experts who cover the NFL for a living, but still couldn't hide their surprise and admiration for what the 49ers are accomplishing. The main story coming out of Monday Night Football wasn't just that the Niners beat Carolina 29, it's that they're now 8-4 and firmly in the thick of the NFC playoff race, despite dealing with arguably more significant injuries than any other contender in the entire conference. When you really break down what Kyle Shanahan and this coaching staff have had to overcome, when you look at the depth chart and see how many key players are missing, it becomes absolutely clear that we're witnessing one of the most impressive coaching jobs in the NFL this season. Hey, what's up, everyone? Before we jump into this massive 49 ERS news, I just want to ask you for a quick favor that would mean the world to me. If you could just take 1 second right now and hit that like button, it would be incredibly important to me and helps this channel grow so much. I know it seems like a small thing, but those likes genuinely make a huge difference in getting this content out to more 49 ERS fans who need to stay updated on everything happening with this team. So seriously, just tap that like button real quick. It literally takes 1 second, and it helps me out more than you know. Let me start by giving you the full context that SportsCenter was establishing right at the top of the show. Because understanding just how short-handed this 49ers team has been is essential for appreciating the magnitude of what they're accomplishing. The analysts were going through the injury list, and it's absolutely staggering. Nick Bosa, their best defensive player and one of the most dominant pass rushers in the entire league, has missed significant time. Fred Warner, their defensive captain and all-pro linebacker, has been dealing with injury. On offense, they've had key contributors in and out of the lineup all season. This isn't a case of losing one or two role players. This is losing core pieces of your championship roster and still finding ways to win football games. But here's what really had the SportsCenter crew fired up about Monday night's performance specifically. And this is where you start to see Robert Saleh's impact as the defensive coordinator. The 49ers defense absolutely dominated the Panthers in every conceivable way, holding them to just 230 total yards, 161 passing yards, and only 69 rushing yards. Now I know what you're thinking. The Panthers aren't exactly an offensive juggernaut. Bryce Young has struggled significantly. They're not a playoff-caliber team. But here's the thing the ESPN analysts kept emphasizing. The way the Niners dominated, with so many players on the field that casual NFL fans couldn't even identify, shows you the level of coaching and scheme execution happening in San Francisco right now. The show dove deep into Saleh's defensive game plan, and this is where you really see the chess match and the strategic brilliance on display. The Niners blitzed Bryce Young at a 29.4% rate, which is higher than their season average, and when they did blitz, Young was absolutely terrible. He went 3 of 8 for only 14 yards and threw 2 interceptions when facing pressure. The Panthers had minus 15, unexpected points added against the blitz, which was the 4th worst by any team in a single game this entire season. That's not just good defense, that's elite scheming and execution. That's knowing exactly when and how to dial up pressure to maximize confusion and force mistakes. What the SportsCenter panel kept coming back to, and I think this is absolutely critical for understanding where the 49ers are as a franchise right now, is that this team has one of the worst pass rushes in the entire NFL statistically. They're not getting consistent pressure from their front four, they're missing the game-wrecking ability that Nick Bosa provides when healthy. And yet somehow, Saleh and this defensive staff are finding ways to scheme up pressure, to create turnover, to make life difficult for opposing offenses. The analysts were showing how they're using creative blitz packages, how they're disguising coverages, how they're getting the most out of young players who are being thrown into significant roles earlier than anyone anticipated. Now, let's talk about Kyle Shanahan and why the ESPN crew was making such a strong case for him to be Coach of the Year. I know Mike Vrabel is the popular pick right now because of what he's done with the Patriots, turning around that franchise and potentially winning the AFC East in his first season. But here's the argument that the Sports Center analysts were making, and honestly, it's pretty compelling. Vrabel hasn't had to deal with anywhere near the level of adversity and injuries that Shanahan has faced. Vrabel took over a team with low expectations and has overachieved, which is fantastic. But Shanahan has had to completely reinvent his roster on the fly multiple times this season and is still 8-4. The show spent extensive time breaking down Shanahan's coaching resume since taking over the 49ers in 2017, and the consensus among the panel was that this might be his finest coaching performance to date. When you consider everything that's gone wrong, all the obstacles he's had to navigate, all the adjustments he's had to make week to week based on who's available, the fact that this team is not only winning but competing for a playoff spot is absolutely remarkable. The ESPN analysts were showing clips of Shanahan's play-calling creativity, how he's maximizing the weapons he does have available, how he's keeping this offense functional despite significant limitation. What I found particularly fascinating during today's Sports Center discussion was when they started talking about the opening drive against Carolina and what it represented philosophically. The Niners came out and had a 15-play drive that took nearly 9 minutes off the clock, went 3 for 3 on third downs, and set the tone for the entire game. The analysts were breaking down how this was a statement drive, how Shanahan was establishing the physicality and identity he wanted, how he was playing to his team's strengths by running the ball downhill and controlling the line of scrimmage. When the 49ers can get an early lead and dictate the tempo and style of the game, that's when Shanahan is most comfortable as a play caller, and that's when this offense is at its most dangerous. Now we have to talk about Brock Purdy, because his performance on Monday Night Football was probably the most controversial and discussed aspect of the entire game, according to the Sports Center coverage. Purdy was bad, there's no sugarcoating it. He went 23 of 32 for only 193 yards with 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. His quarterback rating was a dismal 58.5, and if the Niners had been playing a better team than Carolina, they almost certainly would have lost. The ESPN panel was dissecting every throw, trying to understand what went wrong, trying to figure out if there's a concerning pattern emerging or if this was just an off night. The show explored several potential explanations for Purdy's struggles, and this sparked really interesting debates among the analysts. Was it rust from missing time earlier in the season? The counter-argument is that he looked fine against Arizona the previous week. Was it the turf toe injury affecting his mechanics and ability to drive the ball downfield? Purdy himself has said the toe isn't causing his lack of velocity, which if true is actually more concerning because it suggests his arm strength might genuinely be declining. The Sports Center crew was showing side-by-side comparisons of throws from earlier in Purdy's career versus Monday night, and you could see the difference in ball velocity and zip on certain routes. What really got the panel's attention, and I think this is a huge storyline to watch moving forward, is that Purdy has now thrown 7 interceptions this season, and going back to last year, turnovers have become a significant problem. The analysts were discussing how Purdy sometimes plays like he has a cannon arm when he actually doesn't, how he takes risks that quarterbacks with his physical limitations probably shouldn't take. He has the mentality of a gunslinger like Brett Favre or Josh Allen, but he doesn't have the physical tools to back up that aggressive approach. The comparison that kept coming up was to Mac Jones, who when he filled in for Purdy in those 8 starts, played much more conservatively and managed the game rather than trying to make hero throws. The Sports Center crew also spent significant time looking ahead to the Browns game this Sunday. And this is where the concern about Purdy's performance becomes even more acute. Cleveland has an elite defense led by Myles Garrett, who has 18 sacks this season and is an absolute monster off the edge. The analysts were breaking down the matchup and predicting that Garrett will be lined up over Colton McKivitz all game long, testing whether the 49ers' right tackle can handle one of the best pass rushers in football. Historically, McKivitz has struggled badly against elite edge rushers like Jared Verse, Josh Sweat, Danielle Hunter, and Will Anderson, so there's real reason for concern. What made the ESPN discussion even more interesting was when they brought up Kyle Shanahan's historical struggles against Jim Schwartz, who's now the Browns' defensive coordinator. Shanahan is something like 1-9 against Schwartz-coached defenses throughout his career as an offensive coordinator and head coach, with his offenses averaging around 15 points per game in those matchups. That's a brutal track record, and combined with Purdy's inconsistent play and the matchup problems Cleveland presents, the 49ers are facing a really difficult test this weekend, despite being the more talented team on paper. Now, let's talk about Christian McCaffrey, because his performance Monday night and his season as a whole was probably the most universally praised aspect of SportsCenter's coverage today. The panel was going through his statistics and accomplishments, and they're absolutely staggering when you really look at them. McCaffrey leads the entire NFL in touches. He's 10th in rushing yards. He leads the league in receptions with 81 catches, which is insane for a running back. And he's 10th among all players in receiving yards. Even more remarkably, he's had 100 or more all-purpose yards in every game this season, except one. The show dove deep into McCaffrey's impact using advanced metrics and film study. And here's where you really see how valuable he is to everything the 49ers do. Against Carolina, he forced 11 missed tackles, which tied for the 5th most by any player in a single game this season. For the year, he leads the NFL with 83 forced missed tackles, and he's only 10 away from his career high of 93 that he set in 2023. The SportsCenter analysts were showing his touches chart from Monday night, displaying how the Niners use him all over the field, running him to the perimeter left and right, up the middle, catching passes out of the backfield, motion play, you name it. He's the ultimate chess piece that allows Shanahan to attack defenses from every conceivable angle. What the ESPN crew kept emphasizing, and I think this is absolutely vital for understanding the 49ers' championship chances, is that McCaffrey has to be in the conversation for both Offensive Player of the Year and even MVP. Now, obviously, quarterbacks typically win MVP, but when you look at McCaffrey's usage rate, his production, his efficiency, and most importantly, how crucial he is to everything San Francisco does offensively, there's a legitimate argument that he's been one of the 5 most valuable players in the entire league this season. The analysts were asking the question, where would this 49ers team be without Christian McCaffrey? And the answer is probably somewhere around 4-8 or 5-7, completely out of playoff contention. The show also spent time discussing McCaffrey's durability concerns and injury history, because obviously that's always hanging over everything with him. He missed significant time in 2024, he's had various injuries throughout his career, and the 49ers are using him at a rate that might not be sustainable over a full season and into the playoffs. But here's what the SportsCenter panel kept coming back to. When you're 8-4 and fighting for playoff positioning, when you have a realistic chance to make a run, you can't hold back your best players trying to save them for later. You have to use your weapons when they're available and trust that the medical staff and training staff can keep them healthy. One thing that came up during the ESPN analysis that I found absolutely fascinating was the discussion about the 49ers' offensive line and how it's improved recently. They benched Connor Kubiak, the 7th-round rookie who was struggling, and with Spencer Burford and Ben Bartch healthy, they've established a guard rotation at left guard that's made the entire offense function better. The analysts were showing film of how the line is creating better running lanes, how they're holding up better in pass protection, how the continuity and chemistry is clearly improving. When you can establish the run game and protect your quarterback, everything else becomes easier for Kyle Shanahan's offense. The SportsCenter crew also discussed the philosophical approach the 49ers showed Monday night, particularly that opening drive that set the tone, going downhill, playing physical, making a statement, taking 9 minutes off the clock. When this offense can establish that identity early, when they can take a lead and force opponents to play from behind, that's when they're at their most dangerous, because now Shanahan can mix in play action and misdirection and all the creative scheming he's known for. The Panthers couldn't stop the run, couldn't get off the field on third down, and by the time they knew what hit them, the game was essentially over. What I loved about today's SportsCenter coverage was how they contextualized where the 49ers sit in the broader NFC playoff picture. At 8-4, they're right in the mix. They've won quality games against Seattle, the Rams, and now a Panthers team that's above 500. Yes, they've had one of the easier schedules in the NFL, but they've also dealt with more injuries than basically anyone else in contention. The NFC is absolutely wide open this year. There's no dominant team that looks unbeatable, and the 49ers, with their coaching, their playmakers like McCaffrey, and their championship experience, could absolutely make noise if they get into the playoffs. Listen, after watching the entire SportsCenter segment today breaking down the 49ers' win over Carolina and where they stand moving forward, I'm absolutely convinced that this team is being underestimated by most people around the league. Yes, Purdy needs to play better. Yes, they have injury concerns. Yes, the schedule gets harder down the stretch, but when you have Kyle Shanahan scheming offense, Robert Saleh scheming defense, and Christian McCaffrey as your centerpiece, you have the ingredients to beat anyone on any given Sunday. The Browns game this week will tell us a lot about whether this team is for real or if they're just beating up on bad team. But at 8-4, they've earned the benefit of the doubt, and I wouldn't want to face them in a playoff game if they make it.